All right, but let's talk to Brian Billick. Great to have him with us, former Super Bowl winning head coach of the Baltimore Ravens. And Brian, everybody here in Cincinnati, so excited again. A complete and thorough domination of the Bengals over the Bills. Were you surprised? I'm not going to say easily, that's the wrong word. Were you surprised at how overwhelmingly dominant the Bengals were of the Bills in that game?
Yeah, like everybody, and it was on the front lines, offensive and defensive line. We talked about the concern going in, the vulnerability of the Bengals offensive line because of injuries. And yet they were just, like you said, there's no other word for it, dominant, both in the running game, in protection, on the road, in Buffalo. So I think it's a fair assessment. We keep talking about, well, the Bengals for real, and they're building off last year, and Joe Burrow's really good. No, they're the best team in the AFC from my money, including Kansas City. Now we're going to find out, and it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a hell of a game. But I think when you size them up with Burrow and the weapons, and now the offensive line, their ability to run the ball, what they did with their defensive line, across the board, I think you give pretty much all the checks to Cincinnati.
I asked Tim McGee this question a little while ago, Brian. You've been in this position, maybe not to this extent, where you lose 3 starters over the course of 3 weeks, and you're going into Buffalo with 3 brand new guys. One guy starting at left tackle, although he played it in college, first time in his NFL career, in Jackson Carman. If you get, Jonah Williams back this week, 85%, whatever it might be. Kappa's had a great year as a starting right guard, but, he injures his ankle. He comes back, maybe he's 85%. Would you keep that same group in there that dominated Buffalo yesterday and not make any changes?
Why not? Because you're going to face a group that I don't think's as good as the Buffalo front seven. I don't, and nothing against Kansas City, and Steve Spagnuolo does a great job, but I don't think they have the talent along their front seven that Buffalo had. So I don't know why you wouldn't continue to go with those guys, because they're confident now. They're feeling good about themselves. We've seen that they have a good, solid scheme against Kansas City that they're confident in. So I'd stay with those guys. Yeah, I've had where I've lost 3 of my 5 starting offensive linemen. Now I went 5-11, so I don't know if it's a good reference point, but it's impressive what they were able to do, and they're going to go in with Kansas City. That's the biggest thing. They're going in with confidence, which is hard to do to go into Kansas City, not just because of the game they came off of, but because of the way they played Kansas City before. And so, this is going to be very interesting.
All right, I want to get away from the Bengals for a minute, and I want to talk to you about a couple of other issues that are going to be out there in the league. I think we all agree quarterbacks get too much of the credit oftentimes, and oftentimes they take too much of the heat. Let's start with Josh Allen. When this season started, everybody thought, hey, this is a guy, you said it a little while ago, about Burrow, and everybody thought Mahomes and Allen, who's the best, who's the better of the two. Burrow's not even in the conversation. Now Allen, they lose at home. It's a second year in a row now where they don't get even to the AFC Championship game. What do you think's going on up there in Buffalo, at least in his mind, or with the franchise's mind?
Well, as you led in with, it's always hard to separate the play of a quarterback from what's going on around him. He did not play well. I still think he's an outstanding talent. I think he's still in the same caliber of Mahomes and Burrow, but he needs to step up in these big games. That's the next challenge for him. We've seen him perform in the big games. The other night, I think it was more, I give credit to Cincinnati more than I think that the Buffalo and Josh Allen didn't play well. I think Cincinnati just dominated. They dominated on the front seven. They couldn't run the ball. Cincinnati just chewed up the clock every time they got the ball. And Buffalo showed, and they responded. Every time Buffalo kind of got something going, then Cincinnati responded. So I don't think that's all Josh Allen. I think they're legitimate questions, and I think they will be asked until he can get them into the championship game and win and go to a Super Bowl. But I don't think it's an indictment of Josh Allen. I still think he's one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the league.
All right, what about Dak Prescott?
That one's interesting. Clearly, the up and the down and coming off the big game that they had. And now that was an outstanding 49er group, and it was on the road. Okay, fair enough. But still, he's got to step up in the big games, and so far he has not. Um, and same thing with Josh Allen. Until he does, it's a legitimate question. And their offensive line needs to get back to where it is a team that can run the ball at when they want to at will, to augment now the play actions, because they've certainly got the big play receivers down the field. But no, those are legitimate questions. I don't think you bail on them. I don't think it's all of a sudden, okay, Dak Prescott can't play and should Dallas go another direction. But he's going to have a tough off season, having to come into this next year and show that he is indeed that guy consistently. And the hard part will be he can do it all during the regular season. And I will say, okay, great, but let's see what happens in the postseason. So we really won't be able to answer the question until we get into next year's postseason.
Getting back to the Tim McGee conversation for a minute, and I found it interesting, but you're a guy who actually had to sit down and do it. And we were talking that ever since Zach Taylor decided that in the coin flip, about halfway through the year, he decided from now on, if we win the coin flip, we're taking the ball first. We're not doing this stuff where we're deferring anymore to the second half. And it has led, by and large, a huge part of this winning streak that's knocking on the door at 10 in a row now. They get the ball first. They seem to go down the field almost every single game and jump on the opponent with an opening touchdown. But to the scripting of the plays, when you were the offensive coordinator, later the head coach, walk us through scripting the first 15 plays, because it seems like the Bengals, now they got to execute, but it seems like that they have been nearly flawless in the start of games, knowing they're scripting the first 10, 15, 25 plays.
Well, let's go back to the history of it. It began with Bill Walsh in Cincinnati when Paul Brown was the head coach, and Paul Brown would sit down with Bill on Sunday mornings and say, okay, what are your openers? Give me your 15 to 20 openers. And Bill, being the coach that he was always going to be ready for that conversation. We thought, well, if I'm going to do that, I'll share it. Let's share it with the team on Saturday night and talk through what my opening calls are. And if we're going to do that, let's orchestrate earlier in the week so we can actually practice the sequence. So everybody does that. I think some people misunderstand. It doesn't mean you just have the first 15 plays. What it means is, here are your opening plays on first down, second long, second medium. Is it a first down to open a series? Is it a first down after a big play? Is it a first down after a second and third down conversion? Here's my first 3rd and 1. Here's my first 3rd and 2 to 3. Here's my first 3rd and 4 to 6. Here's my first 7 to 10. Here's my first 3rd and 11 plus. So it's not just okay, here's play 1, here's play 2. Here's my opening play to start the series. All right, here's my first, second and long if I don't get anything. If I get if let's say it's a run and a good second medium, okay, here's my first second medium play. Here's a third medium. So, and it works its way all the way down. Okay, if I get into the plus 40, all right, here's my first vertical. Is it the first vertical after a big play, or is it a vertical after I've earned my way there? And then now when you get down to the red zone. So it's a series of opening plays, one plays off the other. And yes, you script personnel and formation and whatever. But it's not just here's the first 15 plays. Here's the first 2 or 3 plays in these categories and how I will play off them. And they have been brilliant. And as long as they're having, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, they're confident, they feel good about it. I'd keep doing it. No, it's great until you get your first 3 and out. And now all of a sudden that flips the script and you've given your defense, in a tougher field position. But the way that offense is clicking, I understand totally wanting to take the ball to start the game.
Tim thought it was important that what it did, Brian, is that, back when he played, and Sam Weiss was the head coach, you knew Sam, coach against Sam, offensive-minded guy, much like yourself. Both of you great innovators, offensive thinkers. You had Boomer Esiason, you had James Brooks, you had Ickey Woods, you had Chris Collinsworth, you had Tim McGree, you had Eddie Brown, you had Rodney Holman, you had all these weapons, right? Just like you had in Minnesota. Tim thought it was very important in that quote unquote scripting of plays that every guy at least knew they were involved in those first scripting of plays from an individual standpoint. Did you try to do that? Because, I mean, the easiest thing in the world, right, would have thrown the ball 10 times to Randy Moss. But you had other pretty good players around you.
You want to get everybody involved, right? You don't want it to go all of a sudden. That's where all of a sudden a team gets criticized for not running the ball enough, or not throwing it enough, or not going to this guy or that guy. When you get back to it, they're in a bunch of 3 and outs. Well, you can't get anything going when you don't have that kind of rhythm. You're going to have a play. I always had a place on my game plan. Here's a Randy Moss box. Here's a Chris Carter box. Here's a Robert Smith box to go to get them involved, particularly in critical situations. And in the case of Cincinnati, you got a lot of boxes, which is good. You know, you got a Hurst box, you got a Chase box, you got a Higgins box, you got a lot of boxes in there to get them involved because you want to do that. Now, you can't get to them all, and it's never perfect. You also get a sense of, because every defense at some point is going to come in and you start to get a rhythm. Okay, who is it they're going to stop? Okay, if defensive, I said you can stop anything you want offensively. I don't care who it is. I can stop it. The question is at what price? I can shut down Jamar Chase in a New York second, but am I going to get now beat up with Higgins and Hurst and Joe Mixon? So the question becomes, who are they trying to take away? And now what are your answers to that as well? And that's tough for the player, and he's got to recognize, okay, it's hard for me to get going here because, you know, Chase, they're doubling me, they're bracketing me, they're rolling everything to my side. That's why you saw Hurst was so effective, because clearly in Buffalo they're going, okay, we're gonna double or bracket Chase, and we're not gonna let Higgins get going. Well, that meant one-on-one you had a great matchup with Hurst. So that's a good job with Joe Burrow recognizing, okay, well, you want to do that, we'll do that. I got an answer for it, or I'll run the ball to Joe Mixon. And so that's the good thing, is they have an answer. He can go whatever box he needs to once he gets a sense of who they're trying to take away.
You know, Brian, before we let you get out of here, we had Kenny Anderson on last week, and he was talking about how selfless this Bengal team is from an offensive standpoint, walking through the example you just gave. You know, if Jamar Chase has a game where he has 3 or 4 catches for 48 yards, you never hear the guy complaining after the game. You never see him walking up and down a sideline and throwing his hands up in the air. Tyler Boyd was the number 1 receiver on this team 3 years ago, before Burrow showed up. He's almost an afterthought as a number 3 guy, a damn good number 3 guy, but he's almost an afterthought now with Chase and Higgins and on and on and on and on. It leads me to Stephon Diggs yesterday.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I asked a question, Brian, before you came on here today. I don't know when all this stuff changed, and there have been quote-unquote divas through the years, whether it was, you know, Des Bryant or what's the guy's name the Bengals had for a year here? Yeah, Terrell Owens. You know, Brian, look, you had a guy that was as demonstrative as anybody in Chris Carter. I mean, that guy felt like he should have had the ball. You've forgotten more about this than I have. But he felt he should have been getting the ball every single play, right? But for Diggs in the fourth quarter, 2 minutes to go, the game's all but over. They were really never even in the game. But here it was, a 4th down, their last possession. Allen throws it to somebody else besides him, and he's walking over on the sidelines, throwing his hands in the air, yelling and screaming, walks in the locker room, grabs all his stuff, turns around, walks out the door. Got to get a teammate to come back and get him. I mean, are we at a point now, you know, nobody criticized him after the game. Not McDermott, none of his teammates, none of that kind of stuff. How would you handle that on Monday morning?
That is a tough one, because every group is capable of it. The group that you're talking about in Cincinnati, the group I had in Minnesota at the time, because you were winning. And they recognized that there was a strength, that the better Chris Carter does, the better Randy Moss is going to do, the better it opens up for Robert Smith to run the ball. It's all, you know, so, and they understand that balance, and you're winning. It's when all of a sudden, like in Buffalo, when you hit that rough spot, and now, you know, it was real simple, and you don't want to get in a tit for tat for that. But the answer for Josh Allen's as simple as, I didn't go to you because there were 3 guys on you on that down, okay? This was the only option of it, because obviously give them some credit. Cincinnati went and said, we're not going to let you throw the ball here. Okay, so that's part of it too. And you're right. We're in the age of the diva receiver and all the guys you talked about. And that doesn't mean the group in Cincinnati under tougher times, that doesn't present itself. It's human nature. It's the classic players jumping on the soapbox going, I confess he did it, type of mentality. And it's replete, and everybody's capable of it, and it happens in tough times. But the precursor to it is saying, guys, if you don't do that, that leads to the good times. But in today's world and with the athletes you have, it's just no. You try to you try to approach it calmly. Hopefully, saner heads prevail. You get him back in. You kind of talk through it and show him. And now, if he wants to carry that further forward, that's his choosing. But that's not a good thing, because it's selfish. And there's a reason Josh Allen didn't go there. Josh Allen wants to get you the ball. That's been proven. Okay, but you got to give the other side credit as well.
All right, before I let you go, how was the bowl game?
Great fun. I love coaching the Hula Bowl, because these kids need that game. Sometimes you get into the all-star games, you got the top end guys, and they're going to be top picks, and they really don't want to play. These kids are going to be back in, if they're lucky, second, more likely third day of the draft, undrafted free agents. Had a good group of quarterbacks. Tanner Morgan from Minnesota, all of them. Holt Ehlers from Eastern Carolina, and then Sean from Penn State. Good kids and smart and unique. They were all guys that played their entire careers there. Sean Clifford at Penn State. Good, mature, great leaders. Just great fun to be around. They played very, very well. They all got to play a lot, so it's fun bowl to be a part of.
All right, give me one name. I know you're not around these guys all the time, and you don't see them, over a training camp or something. But give me maybe one name that we can just kind of keep an eye out for when the draft comes around, where you say, you know what, I saw enough of this guy to think maybe here there might be a little something that somebody's overlooking.
Well, last year I had Pacheco and didn't know. He was a running back and good solid runner, but you're rolling all the guys through because you want to get them all their reps. And you could see, boy, this is good, and it was good all week. Had no idea it was going to be that good for Kansas City. This kid, Christopher, I think it's Jones or Christopher Lloyd. I'm terrible with the names. The running back from BYU.
Okay.
Ended up being the MVP. He's pretty good. Good out of the backfield. Good, strong, physical runner. The Cooks kid, the wide receiver from San Jose State, showed he had some play about him. Have a couple good tight ends. Turner from Toledo was really good, and Ezekiel from UCLA. So there were some good kids in the game.
Good. All right, Brian, thanks as always for your time, my friend. Have a great rest of your week.
All right, sounds good.